First of all, how did you first meet Bruce Lee?
Well, I met him in about 1959 when he had come to Seattle. I think he had first landed in Frisco, but you know, the Chow family, Ruby and Ping, actually Ping, the husband, had been Bruce's father's troupe of, you know, the theater, you know, presentations that they were involved in. So I think they owed him some favor, so they told him that you know, they could take care of him up here. So that's probably why he came up here.
Okay, and were you guys immediate friends, or did your relationship?
No, actually, Bruce was this restaurant that the Ruby Chow family had was on a street called Broadway, which is kind of a main divisional line right through the city, and he was going to a little vocational school called Edison Vocational School, and every morning he would go down this Broadway and into the school, and he bumped into to one of the actually his first student was Jesse Glover.
Right. Okay.
And so they bumped into each other, and I met Bruce through the gang that Jesse was in. I shouldn't say gang, the group that was that ran around.
Guys that he hung out with, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Through them.
Okay. And at the Seattle school, did Bruce integrate other arts at that time, or was it strictly Wing Chun?
Well, you know, Bruce was well endowed in just a number of different styles. I mean, you know, the Hung Gar, Charlie Butt, you know, all these different things, and the Praying Mantis. I mean, he was very, very knowledgeable about all these different things. But I think he probably found that Wing Chun, to his satisfaction, when he, you know, prior to his leaving Hong Kong, was something that he probably identified with a little bit more being realistic in his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So he did concentrate more on a sort of a modified Wing Chun version. You know, to my knowledge, at that time I wasn't really that knowledgeable all the different, you know, aspects of styles and things like that. But you know, looking back upon it, that's my you know, assessment.
So even then, it was like a modified form of Wing Chun. It wasn't the traditional.
That's right. Yeah. You know, he was a very, very keen-minded fellow that could just look at something in a moment's time and translate it in his own mind as to what he felt was, you know, a little bit more realistic in terms of what works and what doesn't. And so, you know, that was his sort of makeup. But every style has a lot of classical motions as well as, you know, the other type of more realistic, simplified things. And so I think he just kind of picked out what he thought was more realistic, and that's kind of what he taught us.
Okay. Since you were in charge when Bruce couldn't be there, what did Bruce stress to you to stay ahead of the regular students?
Well, actually what he did was he was always on the scene pretty much, but there were times when he was involved in maybe schoolwork or something like that. So he actually let me kind of lead the class to begin with, but he most always came into the class with what was over with, and then you know, made sure that we were doing things right. But prior to the each session, he would take me aside and we would rehearse different things that we'd be working on for that next class. So it wasn't as though I was just doing something on my own. I mean, everything I did was very, you know, realistic and close to what he wanted me to do.
Right. Okay. Bruce was famous for his one-inch punch. Were the mechanics of this taught openly at the Seattle school?
Oh yeah. There was. I don't think there was any. He wasn't the guy that. Well, you know, the consensus, I guess, is that if you teach somebody, you teach them maybe 75% of what you know, so that you always have that 25% reserve in case he turns on you or something like that, I guess. But he was very, very free with his knowledge, and he the only thing that I think that he dealt with was that if he looked at you and felt that you were trustworthy and were dedicated and sincere about what you were doing and good-hearted, why he taught you. He didn't care what race you were, you know, who you were.
Right. Well, the reason I kind of asked that is because Jim DeMille, in his book, kind of makes mention that he's the only one who knows how to do it. And
well, I mean, that's, you know, Jim's opinion, I guess. I'm not going to tell you that that's wrong or right. I know that he, you know, taught me, you know, aspects of the one-inch punch, and I have been trying to follow through, showing my students, you know, but I'm not going to tell you that I'm doing it right, Jim's doing it wrong, or
right.
vice versa.
No.
You know.
I just wanted to make sure that it was openly taught. That's
yeah.
I guess
well, to my knowledge, I don't think, because we used to go to the tournaments and things like that, and that's one of the things that he always showed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you tell me about Bruce's fight with the karate black belt?
Well, yeah, I can tell you, you know, as much as I know. I wasn't actually on the scene when it happened. There was this guy was a second or third degree black belt from Japan. His first name was Yoichi. I can't think what his last name was now, but you know, during those times, karate was more on the upper level on the scene as far as being, you know, one of the leading Asian martial arts, and this guy was a fanatic in his what he thought he knew, and he was on the scene here, and of course they were both going to Edison Vocational School, and whenever Bruce would be doing something, well, he would. I think he just took it personally, like Bruce was trying to put him down or something, and that wasn't the case at all. But he would pop up in some of the exhibitions we give and challenge Bruce openly on right on the stage there, and things like this, you know.
Right.
And it finally got down to the point where Bruce kind of had the philosophy that, hey, you know, you don't go looking for trouble. You just kind of try to shrug it off and you know, and handle it diplomatically. But this guy was an out-and-out fanatic, and he just wouldn't let Bruce down. And he finally got to the point where Bruce had to, you know, to tell him, hey, look, you know, I've tried to be decent with you, and I'm not doing anything against you, and if you keep doing this, we're going to have to get together and you know, settle this thing. And of course, he was ready to go immediately then, you know. But Bruce said, well, look, first of all, let's get this straight. You're challenging me, right? And the guy said, yes, I'm challenging you. And so they decided that they would, you know, take 1 or 2 seconds with each guy down there. You know, the guys, you know, on each side, and they went down to the YMCA handball court, just kind of locked themselves in there, and the you know, the story I got was that this karate guy was, you know, was going through all the antics before the fight of, you know, throwing kicks and all these things like that. I don't know whether he was trying to scare Bruce or what, but Bruce kind of looked at him with a little disdain, I guess, and then this guy, when they got started, well, this guy came in with a kick, and Bruce blocked it, and then just punched him, just, you know, straight punched him all the way down the whole length of the court. And when he, you know, bumped into the wall there, and he was falling, well, I think he either kicked him or punched him a couple more times, and that was it. I think it only took about 11 seconds for the whole thing, from what I hear. So it was a, you know, very short, really, you know, skirmish, and Bruce, you know, made it clear to him that he wanted him to admit that he was the guy that was, you know, challenging him and the troublemaker at the end there. And after that, this guy wanted to come in our class. He wanted to become Bruce's disciple. And, you know, but on the other hand, to show you what kind of a guy Bruce was, he didn't say, you know, screw off, I don't want to have anything to do with you. He actually let him into our class for a while. And but I think he was very insecure in many ways, and because one of the things he asked Bruce was shortly after he was in the club, he said, do you think I could beat Kimura up? And Bruce said, hell no, you couldn't beat him up. He'd beat the hell out of you, you know. And but he was very nice. He was very humble and so forth after that. And you know, I'm not trying to put him down. I mean, he was probably acting like a lot of other people in another style might be, but certainly Bruce did wasn't looking to fight him, you know.
Yeah. How long did he last in the class after that?
Well, he was in the class for, I'd say maybe a month or two, and then he, you know, just kind of petered out. I don't know whether he was, maybe he just felt that, you know, that he was humbling himself too much. I don't know. You know, it's kind of hard to say.
Okay. Even back in those early days, people were always saying that they beat up Bruce. Did you hear that a lot?
Oh, yeah, I used to hear all kinds of things like that, but obviously, you know, you're still hearing those things, you know.
All right. Well, the reason I mentioned that, Joe had mentioned something about a judo guy that had supposedly choked Bruce out, and Joe went and asked him about it, and the guy said he didn't know anything about it. So, you know, it's just kind of funny how stories create themselves.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, at this point in time, Paul, I mean, there's a lot of stories like that you know, for instance, Joe probably remembers that I don't even remember anymore, you know, but I mean, that might have been something in that judo, you know, instance that Joe heard about, and I never even heard about it, you know. But certainly if it was true, why I would have been one of the first guys to hear about it.
Right, right. Okay, weren't you severely injured once during a demo with Bruce?
Well, it wasn't a demo. We were working out in a class, and he was, you know, the group of students was over to the far right, and he was facing me, you know, to the left of the group, and he was looking over there and telling them that the force of the punch, you know, had to be something that penetrates through rather than stopping at the point of impact. And I was wearing glasses at the time, and he was looking over there, and he let go with this punch, and you know, he got me in the eye, with my right eye, and it just broke my glasses, of course, and got glass splinters all throughout my eye, and you know, I started bleeding, and he you know, almost knocked me out, I guess. But anyhow, they took me to the hospital, and you know, I was okay. But that's the only time that he ever, you know, missed. He used to throw those nunchucks around my head, and I could just feel it just barely tick my hair on my head or my ear. And I never flinched, but after that, I got a little bit, you know,
little gun shy, huh?
Yeah, just a little bit.
So he used to use nunchakas back in like '63.
Well,
before that,
when he came back, he was you know, like the local TV stations and you know, different things like that. He would be called upon to do a little demonstration or, you know, some little segment on a program or something, and so he'd always take me there, and he would demonstrate these things, you know. But he was just very, very, you know, just so keenly, you know, able to use those things that you know, he'd whip a kick to the side of my head and just tip my ear or something like that. But I never bothered me because he never missed, you know.
Until that one time.
Just that one time, and
well, didn't he knock Jesse Glover out a couple times at demos before? Or?
Well, I don't recall Jesse Glover getting knocked out, but you know, I mean, whenever we had these demonstrations and we had freestyle sticking hand technique just to demonstrate, you know, the prowess of it, why, you know, Jesse was probably, if you look at just Bruce's strength, you know, bigger and probably stronger than Bruce, but Bruce, I don't know, you know, you have that inner strength that kind of comes out of you. It's like he used to talk about what is it, about 2% of your capabilities of getting that kind of strength and energy out, and anything above that, maybe you can only call it forth during a time of an extreme emergency or something like that, when you fire or something like that. You have something that, you know, that you have to get out of there. I mean, this adrenaline flow brings that forth, but it's something that you just can't call it forth at any given time. You know what I mean? But I think Bruce had that ability to call forth that kind of energy because, you know, he was a little guy. You know, he was only 5'7", weighed 130 pounds. You know, he had a very well, you know, defined physique, but you know, when he took his shirt off. But I mean, still, I mean, he wasn't a big man, you know. So when you look at somebody of that stature coming up with this kind of power, you just wonder where the hell it's coming from.
It's interesting you bring that up because there was just an article in Karate International by Tom Bleecker, Linda's ex-husband.
Oh, Bleecker, yeah.
And he claims that Bruce could do that at will, just tap into that source of adrenaline.
Oh, yeah, and you know, and it's, you know, they talk about mind and body or matter being two different things, but I'm firmly in the belief that it's one and the same. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's
how closely it's correlated. I mean, you can't just say it's a separate entity, one from the other.
Right.
And that's just my feeling. I mean, I'm 69. I'm still feel like I'm learning a lot of things. You know, within myself, and I'm beginning to seem like I'm beginning to tap into that chapter that I've never been to.
In this interview, he mentioned, Bleecker mentioned something that, you know, since he did that so much, that it contributed to some hormonal problems later on in his life, supposedly. I don't know. So, but anyway, how often did you see Bruce after he had left Rockland?
Well, you know, his mother-in-law was still up here, and of course, you know, he wanted to, you know, bring his wife and his, you know, his son up here, and, you know, to see them from time to time. So, I'd say that an earlier part of the, you know, after he left here, why he was up here probably maybe 2 or 3 times a year. You know, he'd say, well, look, I'm going to be up here. Well, for instance, today is what, the 16th of April. He might say, well, I'm going to be up here the 16th of April and be up there for 10 days. I want you to kind of set that time aside from your job so you and I can go over what the new things that we're doing down there, you know. And so this was one of the things that I really appreciated, because he would show me the different things that they were doing that we had, you know, he had gone into from what he had been doing up here, and you know, so I just felt like I was really honored to be able to be, you know, part of his continuing friendship, and the fact that he didn't forget me, you know.
Yeah, my next question was going to be, would he try to liberate you from the earlier teachings in Seattle, and if so, what did he stress to you?
Well, one of the things that he did when you talk about liberation, why, you know, he said at one point, he said, you know, how strongly we attach the importance of Chisao, the sticking hand technique, and when he got down there and he was teaching Kareem Jabbar, for instance, you know, the sticking hand, you could recognize that there was such a vast physical difference between him and Kareem that you know, I mean, it sort of was, it became much less useless than it would be with somebody that's within the range of your own size. And he said to me at one point when he called me, he said, well, he said, you know, he said, sticking hand is really not, you know, the focal point of things as we thought it was earlier anymore, you know. And, you know, at the time I really, you know, didn't understand the impact of what he was saying, but now I can understand that when he was doing it with Kareem, you know, he told me that when I'm looking at him, he says, I'm just looking, I'm almost level with his navel. And he said, normally, he said, if you extend your foot, it's the longest instrument in your body, so you can pretty much keep yourself out of range of a guy trying to hit you if you got your leg out there, right?
Right.
But with Kareem, he said that he could have his leg out there, but Kareem could still hit him easy because he was, you know, he was over a foot taller, you know.
Right.
So one of the things about Bruce, as I said earlier, talking to you is that he was a guy that could look at something just in a flashing moment and tell you what the value of that particular thing he saw was, in terms of whether it's going to be useful or was it useless or what, you know. And so I think all this period of time, when he first got here to when he went down to Oakland and to California, why, you know, he was on a up plane of learning things himself. And I think that he you know, as you read these life stories about guys like Ueshiba, you know, all these other martial artists that in Japan, for instance, and they tell you about how their life, you know, sort of goes along where they learn something from one guy and then they can't learn anymore. They go to the next guy, and they're always looking for some kind of a challenge in terms of getting them up to the next step. And I think Bruce went through that same process here, you know. But I think the big difference probably is that he was a man that was not tied down to a classical mess, as he used to call a lot of things, and so he was self-liberated in that he was looking for things that kept him away from just having tunnel vision, you know.
Right. Okay. Have you found some of the same limitations as Bruce did in Wing Chun, you know, on your own?
Well, you know, as far as Wing Chun, I mean, there's a vast storage of knowledge there, and I don't know very much of it, to be perfectly honest with you. The only thing I know is the modified, you know, techniques that he taught us, and so when some of those people that are real Wing Chun artists, if they were to come into our club and see what we're doing, they'd probably shake their heads and say, "Jesus Christ, what the hell are these guys doing?" You know. So I can't really you know say one way or the other about it. I think that the concept of Wing Chun in principle is very good, in that it's a simplified, straight, you know, movement in that you know, takes away from a lot of impractical things that you know, that you might see somebody else do in another structure. But again, when I mention this, certainly I don't take any of these other techniques away from anybody else, because I always tell guys that, you know, that want to get into our private club, hey, look at you might have the feeling that wrestling is the best thing, or boxing. I mean, hey, if that's what it is, more power to you, because that's what you're going to excel in if that's the way you feel. And we're not here to tell you that we got something that's better than boxing or wrestling or anything else, you know.
Right. Okay. Do you think Bruce kept a lot of things to himself?
Well, you know, I mean, I think Bruce was very open with me, and I think that one of the reasons why he was very open with me was because he, you know, he didn't see any threat to him from me. I mean, I'm a very passive guy. I'm much older than him, and we had a very strong friendship bond between us. And I think I always felt that Bruce never held anything back from me that he had, you know, in mind. But at the same time, he knew that I was only capable of digesting so much food at any given point, so he didn't try to inundate me by throwing a whole bunch of stuff at me. Every time he would come up, he would have the next little set of things that he wanted me to, you know, to practice on.
Okay.
But you know, I at the same time, I never ever did pester him and say, "Geez, Bruce, what are we going to do next? Now, come on, I did this already. Let me get this next thing." I never ever pushed him on that, because I always had a strong, you know, feeling in my mind that, hey, he's not going to try to hold anything back from me. He's going to give me whatever he thinks that I need at what point in time that he feels that I'm wherever I am, you know.
Right. Okay. How do you view Bruce's art of Jeet Kune Do?
Well, I think that certainly he has to be given credit for having revolutionized the whole industry of martial arts. I mean, during the the late 50s and the early 60s, and in that area there, there was still a lot of mysticism in terms of the martial arts, and a lot of the stuff that you see was a lot of classical motions and forms and all these kind of things. And again, I don't say that to try to put anybody down or try to minimize what the value of that is, because I think everything has a value in terms of the total goal of where you're going. But Bruce had his own way of doing things, and I just feel very honored that I was one of the few guys that really got to know him as well as anybody did,
Right. So you didn't actually, did you get to see, what they call JKD up close? I mean, did he say to you, this is Jeet Kune Do?
I guess I can say that in Seattle, I was probably the only guy that really firsthand got, the stages of Jeet Kune Do that he was into whenever he came up here, because when he came back up here, he wasn't teaching anybody. I mean, at that point, he just came up here and he would just teach me privately, just the different things he was doing. So I guess I could say that I have the honor of just saying that I was probably the only guy that he really kept up to pace at the level that he was in whenever he came up here.
From the Seattle.
Yeah. But it's a very confusing whatever you want to call it, nomenclature, whatever you want to call it. I mean, everybody I think looks at Jeet Kune Do and tries to to say, well, what is it? Is it a pak sour? Is it a lop sour? What is it? I mean, but in principle, what is it? It just means the simplicity of being of overcoming your own style with conforming with what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think there was an actual system there, though?
Well, here's my viewpoint. I think that if you want to compare it to a sculptor that takes a piece of clay and ends up with a beautiful art object, yes, he's casting off these little pieces of clay that isn't necessary, but in order to get to that beautiful sculpture at the end, you still have to know how he got there, And so, yes, I think that there are pieces there that need to be gone through to get up to that point.
Okay. With your busy schedule, how often and how many people do you teach?
Well, first of all, I've got just a private club. We don't charge anything, and we're not looking for students. And I'm a guy that just likes to stay in the woodwork here. I'm not at all trying to make any statements or let anybody think that I'm anybody that knows anything more than anybody else. I mean, my knowledge is very, very limited. But my whole philosophy is I do feel pretty secure with what little Bruce taught me and left with me, and so my aim is or satisfaction or reward or whatever you want to call it, is to be able to, if I can share that little bit of knowledge with somebody that is out there that is afraid to assert himself in terms of the group that he's in, because he's afraid that he might be ashamed because he said something wrong or something. Well, Bruce used to always say, hey, if you've got something to say and you're not going to hurt somebody else, well, for God's sake, say it, In other words, instill a little bit more confidence in yourself. I mean, if you got something, be positive about it. Don't just hold it inside and say afterwards, God, I should have said that, but I just couldn't get it out. You know what I mean?
Right.
It relates itself to so many facets of everyday life, and whether you're driving down the road or whether you're in a meeting talking to somebody in a business meeting, or if you're just talking to somebody, actually you're in some form, you're in a sort of an oral combat with the guy you're talking to. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you've got to harmonize yourself and just let it flow. And I think that's one of the big things that I feel that I gained from Bruce. And so this group that we got here, I mean, we're not teaching anybody to fight or anything like that. We're just sharing something with them that if it gets you on the next level of feeling good about yourself, then we've done something, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, do you actually certify people in?
Oh, no, I don't do any of that kind of stuff because people, you know, still. I guess and it's a good feeling in many ways. I'm a very humble guy, and I'm not looking for anybody to be putting me on a pedestal or anything like that because I know I don't belong there. But one of the good feelings is that you know, I can work with these people and do something. But if there's anything to do with certification, things like that, I don't, make any words. I just tell them, look, if you want to come over, I'll get it.